I genuinely don't think homeownership is a realistic goal for anyone anymore. Like, when you actually look at the prices in your area, even in rural towns, even in places people used to say that were cheap, it's absurd. It's honestly becoming a joke. And this isn't coming from someone who's financially clueless or reckless. I'm 19 years old with a $42,000 investment portfolio. I save aggressively, invest consistently, and I still don't see a realistic path to owning a home anytime soon. That's the scary part. And yet it feels weird coming online and basically making a doom post about housing. I don't want to be negative and I don't want to sound defeated, but it's getting that bad. Even my parents, the people that grew up believing that homeownership was just a normal part of life, are telling me straight up that I probably won't be able to afford anything. When your own parents are saying that, you know something is seriously broken. I want to talk about what's actually happening, some basic numbers, and honestly, how this whole thing feels. Because first of all, wages are barely moving. They just aren't. Depending on where you live, wages might have gone up a few percent over the last decade. Meanwhile, house prices have doubled, tripled, or even more at the same time. That gap alone tells you everything you need to know. You can work harder, you can get promoted, you can save every spare dollar, but when the thing you're trying to buy is just running away faster than your income can even grow, it starts to feel pointless. Like, seriously, how do people expect young adults to afford homes when most of us are struggling just to cover basics? Car insurance is insane, rent is insane, groceries keep going up, utilities keep going up, everything costs more except the thing that actually matters, your wage. And then people turn around and ask Gen Z why they don't save. Why don't people plan for the future? Why everyone feels so disengaged? It's because the finish line genuinely feels fake. That kills long-term motivation. When you don't see a realistic version of success, it's hard to care about delayed gratification. Why sacrifice today if tomorrow looks just as unreachable? That's not laziness, that's psychology, and I kind of understand where our generation is coming from. Humans need a reason to grind, and right now, for a lot of young people, the biggest traditional reason is owning a home and starting a family, and this feels completely off the table. It honestly feels like Gen Z has been locked out of the economy, not because we don't want to work, but because the rules have changed before we even got a chance to play the game properly. We didn't get this cheap housing, we didn't get low interest rates, we didn't get affordable land. We inherited the most expensive version of everything and got told to be grateful for it. And then on top of that, you open social media and just start comparing yourself. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all you see are influencers flexing brand new houses, materialistic items, consumerism at 22, 23, 24, massive houses, pools, renovations, luxury furniture, and you're sitting there thinking, what are you doing wrong? Because you're working, you're saving, you're investing, and yet the gap between your reality and what you're seeing online feels completely impossible to bridge. That comparison is brutal. It destroys motivation before it even has a chance to grow because your brain doesn't see context. It just sees the outcomes that people are achieving. You don't see the trust funds, you don't see the family money, you don't see the early YouTube algorithm luck. You don't see the debt, you don't see the stress. You just see the house and the success, the monetary success. And subconsciously, you tell yourself you're behind because of that comparison. What makes it worse is that this comparison happens completely silently. Nobody talks about it out loud. You just sit there alone, scrolling and feeling like you're behind without fully understanding why. It creeps into your thoughts at every second of the day and it makes you second guess your every decision. You might start wondering if you chose the wrong path, maybe if you went to uni, you regret it, or you went into the wrong workforce. And over time, that constant mental pressure just hurts motivation. It erodes confidence and you stop trusting yourself. You stop believing that effort even matters. And that's dangerous because the moment you stop believing progress is possible, you stop moving altogether, even if it's hard. The worst part is, even when you logically know it's not realistic, emotionally it still hits. You start questioning your decisions. You start wondering if investing is pointless, if saving is pointless, if you should just spend everything now and deal with the consequences later. That mindset is spreading fast, and honestly, I can't blame you or other people for feeling that way. But here's where I want to slow things down for a second. Just because homeownership feels dead right now doesn't mean your future is dead. And that's an important distinction. The mistake a lot of people make is tying their entire sense of progress, success, and adulthood to one asset class, one milestone, and one outdated version of making it or being successful. When that becomes unattainable, everything else collapses with it. Homeownership was the byproduct of stability. Now people treat it like the only proof that stability even exists. And that's dangerous because it ignores the reality of wealth, security, and freedom. They don't come all from one purchase. They come from being flexible, from income, and from time. What I've started to realize is that previous generations built wealth through property. Our generation might have to build wealth before property or even around it. And that shift is uncomfortable because it breaks the script we were taught growing up. But pretending the old path still exists doesn't make it come back. For me personally, I've had to mentally detach from the idea that buying a house is the immediate goal, not because I don't want one, but because letting that dominate my thinking was completely draining me. It was making every financial decision feel completely pointless. Instead, I started focusing on things that I could control: income, savings, investing, skills, and time. That's why I invest consistently. That's why I live at home longer than I maybe want to. That's why I keep my expenses low, even when it feels boring. Not because it guarantees a house, but because it buys me options. And options matter more than ownership in any unstable economy. Another thing nobody talks about is timing. Timing is unfair. It always has been. Some generations were born into growth periods, while others were born into transition periods. That doesn't mean one group worked harder than the other. It means they played under different conditions. And once you accept that, you can stop blaming yourself and comparing yourself to things that weren't actually your fault. The mistake is letting that acceptance turn into apathy. Yeah, housing is messed up, it feels discouraging, and it might take longer than it did for your parents. But completely checking out financially because one goal feels unreachable is how people stuck forever. Even if homeownership is delayed, everything you do now will still compound, whether that be skills, investments, discipline, and time. And here's something that sounds counterintuitive. If housing ever does become more accessible again, the people who stayed consistent during the hopeless period will be the only ones in a position to take advantage of it. Everyone else will be starting from zero, emotionally and financially. I also think we need to stop pretending that buying a house instantly fixes life. Mortgages are literally massive obligations: property taxes, maintenance, repairs, interest. It's not just some magical freedom button. A lot of people rush into home ownership without understanding anything, and then spend decades stressed, house poor, and stuck in jobs they hate just to keep up with these large payments. That doesn't mean housing is bad. It means blindly chasing it without context is bad. And honestly, I think a lot of Gen Z is waking up to that. We're questioning things, we're frustrated, and we're skeptical. That's not really a weakness in my opinion, it's awareness. The danger is letting that awareness turn into resignation instead of adaptation. I don't have a perfect answer for you. I'm not going to sit here and tell you just invest and everything will work out. I don't know when housing will become affordable again. I don't know what governments will do. I don't even know if the stock market will keep going. What I do know is that giving up will guarantee you literally nothing. Staying consistent at least gives you a chance. And maybe the uncomfortable truth is that our generation has to build life differently. Slower in some areas, smarter in some areas, less attached to appearances, more focused on resilience. That doesn't mean worse, it just means it's completely different to what happened prior. Home ownership might not be dead forever, but the version we were promised of growing up probably is. And once you accept that, you stop chasing a fantasy and start building something that's actually real. That's the reality I'm coming to terms with. And honestly, it's better than pretending everything is fine when it clearly isn't. Best of luck.